Imagine waking up one morning, opening your phone, and finding out without warning that every cryptocurrency wallet connected to a centralized exchange has just been frozen. No withdrawals, no transfers, no explanations, just a sudden national announcement from your government telling you that all digital assets must be temporarily secured for public financial stability. Your Bitcoin, your Ethereum, your statistical coins, everything locked. You never thought it could happen. You thought decentralization meant untouchable. You thought history would not repeat itself, but history always returns, because this isn't the first time governments have done it. It happened once before 90 years ago when the United States government walked right into the private wealth of millions of citizens and took the one asset they trusted the most, gold. And if you think the same script isn't quietly preparing to replay in 2025, you haven't been paying attention. People in 1933 didn't see it coming either. They believed what every citizen believes before a major financial attack. They would never dare, but on April 5, 1933, they dared. Through Executive Order 6102, Americans were forced by law to surrender their gold to the government, and they were paid far less than what their gold was worth. After the government collected it all, it revalued gold higher, instantly increasing national reserves while stripping the public of the greatest wealth transfer of their lives. Overnight, the government became richer, the citizens became poorer. But what's most terrifying is this: the people supported it, they accepted it, they obeyed it, because the government convinced them that their sacrifice was necessary to save the economy. And the same language has started to appear again: for economic stability, to protect the financial system, to maintain national security. Modern governments don't need your permission, they just need your fear. As inflation rises, debt spirals out of control, fiat currencies weaken, and digital assets challenge traditional power structures. Every government is quietly asking the same question: what do people trust more than the currency we control? And the answer is simple: Bitcoin. For the first time in history, people have an asset that does not rely on governments, banks, or central authorities. An asset that moves across borders, across restrictions, across collapsing economies. An asset that cannot be printed, inflated, or devalued. A modern version of digital gold. And history tells us exactly how governments treat any form of money they cannot control. First, they ignore it. Then they laugh at it. Then they fight it. Then they confiscate it. The year 2025 is already shaping up to be the year governments begin their final phase, taking control of crypto, not by banning Bitcoin, not by destroying it, but by pulling off the same trick they used in 1933, making the public believe the government confiscation is for your safety. Imagine this scenario. A global liquidity crisis suddenly hits. Stock markets crash. Bank withdrawals surge. Stable coins begin losing their pegs. Bitcoin starts spiking aggressively because people rush into the only asset they trust. Social media begins spreading panic, and within hours, a government Digital Asset Emergency Act is announced. They claim crypto is enabling capital flight, destabilizing financial institutions, and creating risk for national reserves. They tell you that temporary control is necessary. They freeze balance transfers. They pressure exchanges. They demand private keys from custodial accounts. They track addresses. They say it's not confiscation, it's regulation. Just like they said in 1933, it wasn't wealth seizure, it was economic protection. And while the public is distracted by chaos, fear, and uncertainty, the greatest wealth transition of the century begins quietly, legally, and permanently. The truth is simple: governments don't fear Bitcoin because it is dangerous. They fear Bitcoin because it is independent. They fear citizens who can store their wealth outside the banking system. They fear money that does not bend to political agendas. In 1933, gold was the enemy of financial control. In 2025, Bitcoin is the enemy of political control, and history of finance is repeating itself with shocking accuracy. But the most fascinating and terrifying part of this story is not the confiscation itself. It's how governments convince people to willingly give up their assets. They don't use force, they use narrative. In 1933, they convinced people that surrendering gold was patriotic, that it saved the nation, that it protected the poor. People did it because they trusted the government. Today, people don't trust the government the same way. So a new strategy is used: fear of technology, fear of hackers, fear of illicit activity, fear of economic collapse. What people fear, they surrender. What they don't understand, they give away. And Bitcoin sits at the perfect intersection of misunderstanding and fear. Look around. Central banks are launching their own digital currencies, CBDC. They promote them as convenient, modern, fast, efficient. But the real purpose is far deeper: control. They can monitor every transaction, approve or reject payments, block financial behavior they don't like, freeze accounts without warning, automate tax collection, enforce spending limits, determine who can access credit. They can even make your money expire if you don't spend it fast enough. And in a world where the government has that much control, Bitcoin becomes a threat not because it's illegal, but because it competes. And every government knows you cannot allow a competing currency to grow stronger than the national currency. So what do? They repeat history. They do what they did in 1933. They frame the confiscation as a national duty, and what begins as temporary regulation slowly evolves into permanent seizure. But here's where the story gets even more powerful, because unlike gold in 1933, Bitcoin is harder to confiscate. It doesn't sit in bank vaults. It doesn't require physical storage. It lives everywhere and nowhere, in private keys and encrypted networks. So how will governments take it? Through the choke points, exchanges, custodial wallets, KYC services, hardware wallet companies, tax authorities, blockchain forensics, cross-border transaction monitoring. Governments don't need your private keys. They just need the places you interact with your Bitcoin to cooperate. And exchanges will cooperate. They always do, because they are licensed, regulated, dependent, vulnerable. They can be pressured with fines, shutdowns, or simple threats. And once governments control exchanges, they control most people's crypto. The crypto holder of 2025 is in the same position as the gold holder of 1933, confident, unprepared, and dangerously unaware that the financial battlefield has already shifted. The government doesn't need to ban crypto. They just need to make it inconvenient, risky, and eventually illegal to hold outside their approved systems. They will tell you that self-custody is suspicious, that anonymous wallets are dangerous, that only regulated custodians are safe, and the moment you transfer your Bitcoin into their safe system, you lost it, just like the citizens of 1933 lost their gold when they walked into banks to deposit it for protection. But here's the twist. Unlike the people of 1933, modern investors have the ability to resist, because Bitcoin gives them that power, and governments know resistance is dangerous. So they use a new tactic: divide and conquer. They will turn the public against each other. They will say, crypto users are causing economic instability. They will say, crypto is undermining national security. They will say, crypto harms the poor. They will claim Bitcoin is used by criminals, tax evaders, and extremists. And eventually, the public will support the crackdown, not realizing they are sacrificing their own financial freedom. Everything that once happened with gold is happening again, not by accident, but by design. But the real question is, why now? Why 2025? Why is this the moment governments finally move in on Bitcoin? Because we have reached the tipping point. The debt crisis is exploding. Inflation is not temporary. Fiat currencies are weakening. Governments need a new reserve asset. And what is the most powerful, most scarce, most globally trusted digital asset in the world? It's Bitcoin. They don't want to ban it. They want to own it. They want to control it. They want to accumulate it while discouraging the public from holding it, just like they did with gold. Governments accumulate first. Public accumulates later. Price explodes. But by then, the public is locked out. The greatest fortunes always belong to the earliest holders. And governments always want to be the earliest holders. That's why you're hearing more talk about regulation. That's why new crypto taxes appear. That's why exchange restrictions grow. That's why banks are entering crypto custody, because the preparation phase is nearly complete. The same pattern that preceded the gold confiscation is repeating, quietly, slowly, silently, until the day it becomes sudden. But imagine something even more dramatic. Imagine a sudden global emergency meeting G20 IMF, biz where major powers agree that uncontrolled cryptocurrencies pose a systemic risk. They announce new coordinated rules. Exchanges worldwide comply overnight. Wallets freeze simultaneously. The average person wakes up to a notice that says their digital assets have been secured for systemic stability. And the only way to get them back is to register them under the new government-approved framework, where the government decides how much you can withdraw, how much you can keep, and how much you must surrender. People will be shocked, angry, confused, but ultimately they will comply, because fear makes people compliant, and uncertainty makes them obedient. But here's the twist that nobody expects. Even after confiscating Bitcoin from public hands, governments will not destroy it. They will store it, accumulate it, hold it in national reserves, use it to strengthen their currencies, use it to settle international trade. Because Bitcoin is not the enemy, it is the prize. The asset that will define the financial architecture of the next century. The digital gold of the post-dollar world. So when you see governments tightening regulations, freezing wallets, restricting withdrawals, attacking privacy, and promoting CBDCs, understand this. It is not because Bitcoin threatens the economy, it is because Bitcoin threatens their power. And every empire in history has done the exact same thing when their financial power weakens. They seize the assets that citizens trust more than the government. 1933 was not an anomaly. It was a blueprint, a strategy, a warning. History is not repeating. It is rhyming perfectly. And in this century, the currency they are coming for is not gold, it is your Bitcoin. The question is not whether they will try. The question is whether you are prepared before they do. Your financial independence depends on it. Your future depends on it. And your awareness is your only protection, because in the modern world, ignorance is the most expensive luxury, and understanding history is the most profitable advantage. This is history of finance, and this time history is knocking on your digital wallet. Will you answer before it's too late?